This video is about Frank Reynolds.
With us today is Frank Reynolds, local business owner and a man with a harrowing story.
That's right.
He was the CEO of a biotech company. What I find interesting about this case, first of all, he was convicted for defrauding the company's investors, which is a classic case. But then I kept reading and then I saw things like he claimed that he was paralyzed and he claimed that he cured his own paralysis. If you hear something like that, this is obviously a red flag. As soon as you have something where someone makes an outrageous claim and then they looked into it and this wasn't true, he didn't cure his own paralysis. So I was curious, who is that guy? What type of a person would make that up? How does he look like? How does he talk? But before that, let's go through the SEC filing. So he was convicted of defrauding the company's investors on 1 count of securities fraud and 3 counts of obstructing an agency proceeding. This is basically what they got him for. So one of the big things was just misleading statements. As a biotech company, they relied on FDA approval and they were dishonest about the timeline of that approval and the status of that approval. And here's what the SEC is writing about this. And Reynolds' own background, which he claimed included curing his own paralysis. In fact, the evidence at trial showed that Reynolds was never paralyzed. What a dumb lie to tell, right? This is so verifiable. So what they had one main drug, and they didn't invent the drug. It's basically an old drug, but they changed the delivery mechanism. So their innovation was basically not the pharmaceutical itself, it was the way the pharmaceutical is delivered in the body. And they claimed that this drug called neurorelease would end thousands of years of morphine and opioid addiction. And then, this is an absolute classic, they had a financing round. They wanted to raise financing of 20 million. Then over many weeks and months, they kept claiming that, hey, this financing round is completely oversubscribed, so we are going to increase the amount from 20 to 30 million. And then a few weeks later, they say, hey, it's still super oversubscribed. So many people want to invest. Let's increase it from 30 to 40 million. But then later, during the trial, the evidence showed that this round actually was never oversubscribed and they in total raised less than 10 million. So they were lying to investors about the product, but also about the financing. Plus the ridiculous claim of curing your own paralysis. And classic Theranos, the managers or the technical people told him right from the start that, hey, the timeline for the FDA approval that you have set is not achievable at all. So this was verified too, but he ignored that and he just made the claims, right? Oh, we can get this approved. And then other things like false invoices or false evidence when it comes to payments, artificially trying to push the stock price. So this is someone who is struggling and who doesn't care about the law, who is just using whatever they can to get their product to market, right? So what's the outcome? The charge for securities fraud comes with a sentence of up to 20 years in prison, 3 years of supervised release, and a fine of 5 million. So he's in big trouble. So I looked up his background because I found the interview quite interesting. And he has a lot of master's degrees. So he lied about his paralysis, right? He lied about having cured his own paralysis. At least I didn't find any evidence of that. So maybe he also lied about his master's degrees. If you look at his LinkedIn, there are a lot of master's degrees listed. He doesn't have a PhD as far as I could tell, but a lot of different masters, including technical ones. So Master of Science is in there, but most of them are kind of in the area of management and administration. So I don't know how technical he actually is. It's kind of weird that he has so many different master's degrees, but let's watch him in action.
This is Shelley Kraft coming to you live on SNN Live. We're at the OTCQB Executive Forum at the OTC Marketplace.
He looks like a photograph. So he's on the left. This is the CEO I'm talking about. He lied about being paralyzed. This is the dude with all the master's degrees who ended up being sentenced, right? This is the guy.
It's in New York City. I have with me Frank Reynolds, PixarBio. It's a publicly traded company, and the symbol is PXRB. Frank, welcome to SNN Live.
Thank you very much for having us, Shelley.
It's good to have you. Let's get started with a short overview of the company, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. So we're a drug delivery company, so we use different...
He has a very unnerving stare. I don't know why. I think it's just a general intensity wherever he is and whatever conference it is. Stock News Now, whatever that format is. But he has a very unnerving look.
Biomaterial drug delivery systems made of polymers, and then we match them with different drugs for different types of neurological conditions. Our lead product is in pain, and we also have a portfolio for spinal cord injury, epilepsy, and Parkinson's disease.
Okay, maybe I'm overanalyzing this, but he kind of talks like a kid would. He just goes through the whole list.
So in reality, you're really a medical device company.
Well, it depends on our formulation. We do have medical devices for spinal cord injury. We have new drugs for pain. We have new drugs for Parkinson's. And we also have some biotech products, some protein.
It's so weird that he keeps looking at the camera. Maybe they told him. So I want to be fair to this guy, even though I probably don't need to. But they probably told him to look at the camera. But the interviewer doesn't really look at the camera. So actually, maybe they didn't tell him. I think it's actually him who thought I should probably look at the camera. Because otherwise, the interviewer would also look at the camera. But it's kind of weird that he's talking to him, and as soon as he gets a question, he's kind of looking at the camera and he's just saying it, and then he looks back at him. It's kind of a very odd format.
Based products for other neurological conditions. So it really depends on the drug that we have. And today, in today's modern world, you're going to have a lot of different multidisciplinary skills in product development. So there's a lot of crossover between drug, device, and it really all depends on the mechanism of action.
Where does the science come from?
It actually comes from our heads. I spent 20 years in college and took all the right courses. I'm a neuroscientist.
First of all, a weird question, but also a good question. So just about the technology, of course it's valid, right? I think he also has patented some type of process, or is in the process of patenting it. So of course, you don't need to invent a drug. If you have a new mechanism, there's always things that can be your IP, and then you can commercialize. So this is not about the business model at all, right? This is about the lying and the false claims and all of that.
Scientist, I'm an engineer. I studied drug discovery and drug delivery at Penn Engineering, and then went to the Wharton School, where I received a master's in R&D management. Then on to MIT and Harvard Business School to learn how to fund and manage and optimize different drug delivery products, taking them all the way to market.
Was there a personal, life story here that you'd like to share with me, how you chose this as your company?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, before we go to the paralysis. So just if you look at the track record and what he just said, MIT, whatever, assuming that this is all the truth. Obviously, this is a very interesting trajectory. You don't need to have a PhD to have a successful pharma company, right? It's kind of odd if you do really hardcore R&D and you're basically the brain behind it, and then you have a bachelor's degree or something, because then people might say, how well do you really understand the technology, or how much time have you spent researching that if you just have a bachelor's degree? So even a master's degree in Germany, for example, in chemistry, bachelor's degree is 3 years, and then 2 years master, and then PhD can be anything from whatever 3 to 5 years, depending on where you are. But this, in general, sounds good. He has a technical background. Then he does additional masters in R&D management, administration. This sounds like someone who is like born to build this company, right? Let's go to the personal story.
Fortunately, I went into a back surgery in 1992, and I woke up paralyzed. I spent 7 years in a body brace on my knee to my neck, and during about 3 years into it, I started doing my own research on spine.
Okay, wait. 7 years in a body brace. So he had an injury, he wakes up, he's paralyzed. 7 years he spends in that. If you make up a lie, should you put out a window where you have like 7 years of something, where you have so many witnesses that you're going to see that can say, hey, oh no, he walked through the door, right? Oh no, I never saw him in braces and I saw him then. But maybe it actually was true to some degree. Maybe he actually didn't mean fully paralyzed, as in I could only move my eyes or something. Maybe he meant that when he's walking a lot, at some point his back is starting to feel numb, and then his legs are starting to feel numb if he walks for an hour or something. So I would be surprised if this accident never happened, if he didn't have any injury at all. I think he just over-exaggerated it. That he says, I had a back injury, maybe parts were slightly paralyzed if I overexerted them, and then he says I was fully paralyzed. So I think he just went a little bit too hard on the paint.
Cord injury and developed a neurorehabilitation plan to get myself back walking, and ultimately got back walking in 1999. Went on to patent a range of spinal cord injury products. Today, I'm the only person, I believe, in history to get every rat, every monkey, and now 7 out of 8 humans have benefited from my spinal cord injury treatment. And now I use a similar kind of model, you could say, for pain. So in pain, we use carbamazepine, which is an FDA-approved pill for pain, but we locally inject it. We reformulate it and inject it with PLG microparticles. And we have a 14-day product coming, followed by a 7-day product and a 3-day product, which are all morphine replacements that don't have any opiate addiction associated with.
This is a huge market, right? This is the other video I did, was also on this opioid-based pharmaceutical for opium withdrawal, right? This is a huge market. The market for drugs and pain relief, there are so many companies in this. And if you think about it, this is really legal drug trading, right? I mean, you can legally manufacture opioids and distribute them to people under whatever umbrella that is. Pain relief, withdrawal, whatever. And that's completely legal. It's kind of crazy if you think about it.
So they're morphine replacement, but they're non-addictive.
I mean, what's the size of the market?
Oh, God, 92 million surgeries a year in the United States.
He keeps looking at the camera like that. I think He really is one of these talkers. If you sit in a room, you talk to him, I feel like you immediately get the sense this person wants to sell me something under any means necessary. There are people that usually have a very red head for whatever reason. They all kind of have a red head, and they just talk and talk and talk, and they just say whatever they can say, and they always try to go through cliches and set sentences just to get as close as possible to you, and they always try to talk you into something. With him, I immediately had the sense, okay, I'm not surprised at all that he did all of that. With the other CEO, I think Sean Baxter, that wasn't obvious at all because this was someone who seemed very, very normal, right? You couldn't really tell that this is someone who committed whatever fraud and so on. But with him, he seems really like a red flag. So when I just hear him speak, I already don't trust him. Like my very first gut instinct, I don't really trust him just based on the way he talks.
Million surgeries a year in the United States.
So which product do you think is going to hit the market first?
Yeah, so our 14-day neuro release, which will treat a range of surgeries, easily the top 15 surgeries in every hospital, would require up to a 14-day post-surgical pain treatment, for morphine replacement. So the patients would walk up from surgery and be...
I keep thinking about this thing where he just increased the financing round. He said, hey, yeah, we're raising 20 million, then 30 million, then 40 million. And in the end, they didn't even raise 10 million. They said, hey, we have so much. What a scam. What a dumb scam. You can't lie to investors. This is right away wire fraud. You can probably lie much more freely to your customer, but you can't lie to investors. So for example, if you have an app and you say something like millions of satisfied users, and this you put out to your customers and people see that, this is social proof, right? You could lie to your customers. Maybe you don't have a million. Maybe they aren't all satisfied, right? But if you say 1 million satisfied users to an investor and you give them that as statistics, you can be in trouble. You can lie to your customers to some degree, but you definitely can't lie to investors. This is one of the things that all of these fraud cases have in common, is they lie to investors. Except for Adam Newman, I believe. Trevor Milton, Elizabeth Holmes, him, Sean Baxter, they all to some degree lie to investors. This is the one thing you can't do.
To move right away. But the treatment only lasts while you're in pain. So if one person gets a knee injection for knee surgery and they're in pain for 4
How can someone look so untrustworthy even when he speaks? So I'm not commenting on the way he looks. I'm commenting on the way he appears as he speaks. How can someone speak in a way where I'm just thinking, I don't believe a word you're saying?
days or treatment lasts 4 days. If another person has an injection that lasts 10 days or pain lasts 10 days, their treatment takes effect for 10 days. In all cases, the system then biodegrades at 14 days and it's simply urinated out of the system, and patients can get re-injected. So it is a biodegradable system, so we can be re-injected to continue to provide pain. So it's a very flexible, very impressive drug that's been on the market 50 years. It's never had a toxic event, and the materials have never had a toxic event. So we have a very compressed regulatory timeline. Clinical studies are very short. The entire clinical program is just 8 months.
Yeah, obviously he kind of lied about that, right? They explicitly told him this is not ready for the market, and even his executive said this timeline is not achievable, right? If you think about it, if he didn't have investors, this wouldn't have been a problem at all, because it's not like he's putting a drug on the market that doesn't have FDA clearance and then he goes to prison. He wouldn't put any drug on the market. He can do interviews and he can all day say that, yes, we are going to be market ready in 8 months and we have so and so many raised in financing. He can talk about that all day. But as soon as it's a public company and as soon as he has investors, then he gets into trouble. The only trouble he has is because he has investors. And as a public company, it doesn't even matter if you're directly talking to investors or not, because every press release is basically going to the public, right? So you could be in trouble by default.
Is the company able to repatent your way of delivering by injection versus the previous patents that were issued for pill form?
Yeah, actually, we have an outstanding patent portfolio for the use of injecting any anti-epileptic drug from 3 hours to 12 months of treatment. So what's important about...
He's like a Muppet. He keeps looking... he keeps looking forward as soon as he gives the answer. I don't know why it's doing that, but it makes it worse. It makes it much worse. Because if he would lock in with the interviewer and he would talk, and then every once in a while he would like have a side eye to the camera, this would be much more natural than basically like a robot and then being super tense.
In order to stay out and be a non-opiate, you have to stay out of the opiate system. So to be a non-opiate, you can't enter the opiate system. When drugs enter the opiate system, they open up the opiate receptors, requiring patients to take more and more drug, and that's tolerance. Patients become then addicted to these opiates because the receptors remain open and they need more and more. To be a non-opiate, you have to stay out of that opiate system. So we use antiepileptics, which are the only drugs to treat NaV 1.7 nerve fibers, which are the nerve fibers for post-op pain.
It's so robotic. So first of all, the question was, can you patent this? I guess this is his answer. Now he's talking about the technology. I wonder what he's like privately, because it's kind of like a business engagement, right? But I wonder what he's like privately, because he seems like a real weirdo.
So we can treat nerve fibers with antiepileptic drugs. It's the only ones that stay out of the opiate system, and we have the patents for local injection of all of them. So we do have Lyrica in our patents. A lot of people ask us about the other antiepileptic, Lyrica. We use carbamazepine, and then there's a whole range of antiepileptics that we have in our patent. Patents will expire in 2034. Our sprinkle-on powder.
I mean, maybe you should have seen something a little suspicious. Don't you think it was like a little suspicious? It's a little suspicious. Every dead black person the police find has crack sprinkled on them. I mean, come on, man.
By the way, which we expect to be used by soldiers in the battlefield, is a 3-day sprinkle-on. It takes effect morphine replacement right away on contact, but doesn't affect locomotion. So soldiers can get themselves to safety without having to put other soldiers at risk. So we have a range of products coming to market. We have the patents to cover all of those for local injection. And again, if there was a better drug for pain treatment for local injection, we would have selected it. We tested a lot in all of our animals, preclinical, and picked the right drug.
So when you were doing your drug picking, were you also keeping an eye on the reimbursement side of it? Because obviously...
Just a short side note, what I really like about these interviews is nobody watches them. So there are very, very few views on these interviews. And usually if someone was convicted or something, you just scroll down, there's like one comment or two comments that just says he just got convicted for fraud. I find them fascinating. To me, this is gold. When I see, oh, this person got convicted, you can look at the case and you can see this person talk, and you can just zoom in on their face and you can see, okay, what exactly were they thinking? You know, because how many master's degree do you need to have, especially in administration, MBA, Harvard, MIT, to know that no matter what you do, under no circumstances can you lie to your investors. This is the one thing you can't do.
Costs of, that's big headlines, the cost of healthcare, right? Yes. So do you have a way of lowering healthcare costs, on top of which, let's get back to full reimbursement?
Yeah, sure. So today there are over 20 insurance reimbursement codes for nerve blocks, over 20, and they're all over $300. We believe that we can take that down to under $200. Our manufacturing costs are going to be well below $50 per unit. So we do believe that we can come out, under $200 easily and help the market take costs out. But most importantly, in today's world, we've kind of migrated from capitated care and capitated budget systems to now the bundled payment systems, where I believe a total knee replacement will receive about $39,000. Of that 39, I believe about 6,000 is associated with post-surgical pain treatment or pain management for the patients after a total knee. Well, of course, we only have one injection, and we believe that'll last 14 days. We may be able to take as many as thousands of dollars out of the capitate or the bundled payment system. So we do have a lot of flexibilities for our doctors, for our hospitals, for the marketplace. With the sprinkle-on powder, it's reconstituted with saline.
Why does he call it the sprinkle-on powder? I keep having to think about Dave Chappelle whenever I hear sprinkle-on powder, and we're talking about an opioid, right?
Come on, man. Who gets shot and sprinkles crack on themselves? Nobody would do that. Bam! Oh! I don't want to leave no mysteries.
It's like sprinkling crack, right?
I asked, and my partner, Dr. Jason Criscione, my co-inventor, and we have 6 people on our patent for inventing it, but Jason and I interviewed upwards of 100 surgeons 3 years ago and asked them what they wanted. They wanted something cost-effective, much lower than $300. Again, we can get under $200 easily. And then they wanted something shipped as a powder and reconstituted with saline. So anybody in the world could have access to saline or distilled water to use our drug.
Do you see any pushback from any source in the market for PixarBio?
Absolutely. Every single maker of opiates is really frustrated with our company. And we've been engaging all the opiate leaders, you could say, maybe considering that they might want a balanced product portfolio. But I think the people that sell a product with an addictive aspect to it have a different philosophy of approaching the market than a company like ours. I mean, when I was paralyzed in 1992, I was a clinical psychologist treating patients in Philadelphia Psychiatric Center. About 20% of all patients in the psychiatric facility are in there for addiction-related problems. And here I woke up paralyzed and on morphine. And my first thought with the patients that I had treated for addiction, I was on it for about 10 days.
So if you just hear about it, of course, this sounds interesting, right? I'm always looking at the positive. I'm actually not trying to poke holes into the business model because I'm thinking, okay, a local anesthetic is basically what he's talking about, or at least it's limited in the body. You don't have to swallow a pill. There's some way of, let's say, locally putting it on the wound, or maybe if it's like right below the skin, whatever it is. So this makes sense, right? Because it's less taxing. You probably need far less of it. So this seems like a very sensible thing to do.
Was the last time I was on it. But I have been focused on non-opiate treatments a long time. I know the battle of the patient. I know the battle of the marketplace. I even have a master's degree in hospital administration, so I understand where the administrative side of the house is coming from, taking cost out, provide.
I counted 6 master's degrees on his LinkedIn. I would actually like to know if this is actually true, if he actually has. And probably yes, because I think it's too easy to verify. I mean, if he went through a trial, it would be way too easy.
More patient care.
So where is the company, what stage are you at with clinical trials? I think it's important.
Yeah, sure. So we're really 2 years away from FDA approval because we do have what's called a 505(b)(2) pathway through the FDA because our microparticles and our drug are already FDA approved for other applications in the body. And again, we have a pill that's already FDA approved for pain. So we only have a 2-year path through the FDA from here. So again, by the end of 2000.
Okay, if that is a lie, I wonder how he can mess it up. He has 6 master's degrees. He has an executive team who's also working on that. And he's in contact with the FDA, so he kind of should know that. Imagine that he was actually completely legit and everything they say about him is a lie and they just try to, in a corrupt way, get into prison. And everything else was just snowballing on him. Obviously not, probably true. And he looks and speaks the part for sure. But how can he not know that? If he does so much administration, the FDA timeline should be something that he should be very, very aware of.
2018, we expect that our first 14-day product will be approved. 6 months later, our 7-day product would roll out of the same GMP manufacturing facility. And then in 2020, we'll have a 3-day and a 90-day injection for people in chronic pain. So if you're in chronic pain, you can get a re-injection after 90 days, just like we do today with steroids, but we'll be doing it with newer release, a real perfect pain treatment.
So Frank, let me ask you, what are some of the goals and milestones you'd like to achieve in 2017?
Even with his lies, he didn't reach his financing goals. 20 million was the goal, less than 10 million is what he got, right? So I wonder what the problem was. Maybe it was just him. Maybe they just opened the door in the room and there he said he was just staring at them and then he said something and then they all left. I don't know. Maybe it was a business model. Maybe the tech didn't work. Maybe he didn't really have IP. I don't know.
Only tell me what you can.
Okay, well, I can tell you that we've been working hard for 3 years, and in 2016, we won Best Small Company to Work For in Boston. So one of our big goals is to win Best Medium or Large Company to Work For in Boston. We're going to be adding 43 people, and we really do want to leverage the culture we've built. We have a very innovative company. All of our scientists are hired by me. I do have a degree in psychology, so we make sure that we have the right chemistry mix.
Yeah, he has way too many weird degrees. What? So first of all, this is Theranos. If you're a really small company, of course, if you hire people, then the CEO is probably going to be there. The bigger you get, the less feasible that is. But even Elizabeth Holmes, she was doing the personal hiring. She was hiring personally everybody. And this is kind of the fraud check, right? Can you vibe with me? If things don't really work out, or if I'm lying, can you roll with the punches? This is a red flag. But they're really small companies talking about hiring 43 people, right? So this isn't a big company at all. But luckily, we have the interviews.
But we'll be building our pilot facility and our commercial facility, hiring those people to build it. And, yeah, we can make probably upwards of 10 million units out of our first facility. So, it's a very fast development program. So we're going to be hiring a lot of people that execute on that.
Now, most importantly, let's get your website out there for our investor audience to have a place to go to find more information.
Yeah, sure. So,
okay, let's end it here. What a guy, what a dude. So what do you think? I mean, my first impression was, that's a scam. That dude, I don't know what. Something is wrong with him. This is someone who's selling an MLM. This is someone who is doing a Ponzi and a pyramid scheme at the same time. This is someone who has all the cliche physical features. If I were to create a cartoon character, someone with slapstick and all the music in the background, who was a scam and a fraud and was doing these interviews, this would be the exact person I would design, right? Red hat, looks like a baby, no hair, perfect. All right, I hope you liked the video. See you on the next one.
What's happening?